Hello you beautiful misfits, my name is Matt and this is Pixelburn, where I take a snarky look at the week's gaming news. Except I was kinda hoping to have most if not all of this month off, since it's, fuck all gaming news January. But then, Nintendo went and held a big presentation all about their new console, the swines. The initial reveal of the Nintendo Switch near the end of October last year gave us the general gist of the thing, the elevator pitch if you will. It was a home handheld console hybrid you could either play on your couch like a regular spot, or, alternatively, bring along to your neighbour's cool rooftop party full of cool people. The basic concept of which I successfully predicted all the way back in 2014 in Pixelburn episode 36. Without a single insider source, I might add. Not even an uncle. Of course, I'm not saying I'm the Nostradamus of video games or anything. That'll be your job. I did also predict Bayonetta would be in Smash Brothers. Just saying. After that initial teaser, Nintendo were content to let us all sit and stew for a couple of months, until January 13th, space year now. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon Tokyo time, Nintendo President Tatsumi Kimishima kicked off the presentation live streamed around the world that promised to show us more. Rather refreshingly for these sorts of things, Kimishima cut straight to the chase by confirming both the console's release date, March 3rd worldwide, and the price, which in Japan will be 29,980 yen. For Americans, the Nintendo Switch is guaranteed to set you back 1 cent shy of $300, while Europeans were, rather unhelpfully, advised to check with their local retailers. A figure for the UK meanwhile wasn't even mentioned, although Nintendo have since confirmed a recommended barter price of 2 chickens and a small pouch of grain. Or about £279.99 if you want to be pedantic about it. That won't include the price of Nintendo's online services however, which will be initially free on launch before transmogrifying into a paid service in the autumn, aka fall. Welcome to 2002 Nintendo. On the bright side, the Switch won't have region locking, so if Nintendo pulls its old artificial scarcity routine yet again, who am I kidding, of course they will, you can confidently pay through the nose for one on eBay, even if it fell off the back of a lorry in Shenzhen. After that came a potted history of Nintendo hardware from Shinya Takahashi, showcasing some of the company's genuine hardware innovations over the years, such as analog sticks, rumble packs, shoulder buttons and so forth, although I'd hesitate to call sticking a handle on the GameCube an outright innovation as such, more of a handy convenience. Still, it served well to illustrate just how Nintendo have taken what they've developed for previous consoles and smushed it all together into this one. And if you think I'm being snotty there, then more fool you, because that's pretty much exactly what Takahashi says about it.
We have packed each and every one of these features into the system.
Cue video explaining most of what we already know. You have a dock, you have a screen.
Apple fan.
The dock plugs into your TV. If you don't want to play on your couch, you take the screen out, slide the controller bits out of their frame and onto the sides of the screen, then take the screen controller with you to play on a bus, train, car ride or at a convenient rooftop party, for between 2.5 to 6 hours depending on the game. So about 2.5 hours then? You can also put the screen on a little kickstand and slide the controllers off to play that way, or give one to a friend, family member, party guest, fellow passenger or itinerant alcoholic for 2-player couch, deck chair, air conditioning unit, bus seat or park bench co-op. Alternatively, if up to 8 people at the cool rooftop party for cool people each have a Switch, they can all play together on their own units over Wi-Fi. You don't need to have it in the dock to charge it either, and it's USB-C compatible. So, props to Nintendo for not going the shitty proprietary charger route. And that was pretty much it for information on the base console hardware. Now, if I'd stayed up till 4 AM expecting something more substantial than that, like say system specs for example, then I would have been disappointed. Fortunately, I was in bed, asleep, like a sensible person. Yep, instead of stuff like RAM, data storage and so weiter, we got a load of stuff about the controllers themselves. Specifically the bits that slide onto the sides of the screen, which Nintendo are calling JoyCons.
I suspect all of you are wondering what the Nintendo Switch JoyCon are like.
Tiny?
These are the JoyCon set in the JoyCon grip.
They look tiny. To cut a long story short, both halves, or both JoyCon rather, have your standard ABXY buttons, a clickable analog stick, a bumper and trigger, accelerometer and gyro sensors for motion control, and 2 shoulder buttons on the straight end that connects to the screen bit. The right Joy-Con however has a home button and an NFC reader for amiibos, because there's no way in hell Nintendo would give up that cash cow. The left Joy-Con meanwhile has a screenshot button that will eventually let you record game footage too, according to Nintendo. Those aren't the only differences between the two halves however. The right one has an inbuilt IR motion camera that can detect distance and shapes, while the left one has haptic feedback, as demonstrated by Mr. Koizumi here pretending to hold a glass with ice cubes in it.
I'm a nice dude with some nice dreams. See these ice cubes, see these ice creams.
The left Joy-Con also lets you teleport into outer space. Possibly. Probably not. Finally, one is blue and the other is red. Assuming, that is, you buy the version of the Switch that comes with red and blue controllers. Nintendo did rather miss a trick there by not making them red and green. Sarcasm aside, Nintendo appear to have crammed an impressive amount of gadgetry into these tiny little things. Perhaps a wee bit too much. Enough about the hardware though. What about the games? That was the cue for Koichi Kawamoto, Switch General Director, to come on and talk about 2 games designed specifically with the Joy-Con controllers in mind. The first being 1-2 Switch, your typical Nintendo party game launch title designed entirely around the controller, introduced with this teaser for Season 2 of HBO's Westworld.
These violent delights have violent ends.
According to Kawamoto, the idea behind 1-2 Switch was a game that could be used as an icebreaker at parties, either indoors or outdoors, like on rooftops for example, and which is played without looking at a screen, but rather
in the eyes of your opponents.
Which only throws Japan's hikikomori demographic right under the fucking bus. After first dragging them outdoors kicking and screaming, of course. Still, 1-2 Switch could make for a decent pack-in game. Or rather it could if the Switch had any bundled with it, which it doesn't. So if you want some violent delights with violent ends to break the ice at rooftop parties, you'll have to fork over an extra $50, or your regional equivalent, on top of the base price. The second game designed entirely around the Joy-Con's assorted gimmicks was ARMS, a nice and brightly coloured game that's all about repeatedly punching your opponent in the face, albeit from a distance and with detachable fists. A bit like that pop station City Fighter game Stuart Ashen keeps getting afflicted with, only not entirely shit. In fact, ARMS actually looks surprisingly fun with a decent scope for something resembling strategy and tactics. This section was presented by the game's producer Kosuke Yabuki, bearing the somewhat unfortunate sounding job title of ARMS producer.
There are over 550 million firearms in worldwide circulation. That's one firearm for every 12 people on the planet. The only question is, how do we arm the other 11?
After that we got on to more, shall we say, anticipated titles, starting with Splatoon 2, which doesn't have the number 2 in place of the letter T in the title. Yet again, Nintendo, you've missed a golden opportunity. It does look rather nifty though, if not quite like a fully fledged sequel, and something I would actually somewhat consider maybe possibly picking up a Switch for. Not straight away though. Splatoon 2 isn't due for release until the summer. After that came the requisite Mario title of course, Super Mario Odyssey, which features Mario here running around a New York City alike called New Donk City. Now, you'd think Mario would seem right at home there, him supposedly being a New Yorker and whatnot, except absolutely none of the people in NDC look anything like him. At all. Wait a second. Popular cartoony video game mascots running around a 3D city full of relatively normal looking human beings. Where have I seen that before? Seriously though, is Mario just really short for a human being, or has his time in the Mushroom Kingdom mutated him somehow? It is after all generally accepted that Mario and his brother Luigi were 2 ordinary plumbers from Brooklyn who ran a moderately successful plumbing business. Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, Yoshi's Island DS and Mario and Luigi Partners in Time contradict this however, claiming Mario was in fact born and raised in the Mushroom Kingdom. So was he ever really human in the first place? What if he's secretly some kind of vat-grown battle chimera moulded by dark Mushroom Kingdom science? In a realm where you can literally pluck money from the sky, it'd be easy peasy to get the funding for something like that. As for who would sanction such a perversion of morals and science, well, outside of some old comics and box art, we never see Princess Peach's dad, the hypothetical Mushroom King, do we? Or should that be Mushroom Emperor? Because how does a mere princess command the allegiance of multiple kings, as shown in Super Mario Bros. 3? Surely she'd have to be called Empress Peach, unless she's not the true ruler, but merely a puppet, a decoy to lure out enemies of the realm so they may be destroyed by the Mushroom Kingdom's military advanced retaliation and insurgency organism, Mario for short, a mindless imperialist tool of destruction, dressed in the garb of the proletariat yet existing only to uphold the interests of the Mushroom Kingdom elite. I'm starting to think Bowser is the right idea. But then according to the anime Super Mario Momotaro released in 1989, Mario is actually a Jesus figure who was hatched fully formed from a giant cosmic space arse. So what do I know? Anyway, it's basically Super Mario 64, only it's for the Switch, and Bowser is dressed like a riverboat gambler. As well as bouncing between walls, collecting coins, throwing bob-ombs and other standard 3D Mario things, Mario can also do stuff with his hat, which now has eyes, and is presumably alive. Further proof, if any more were needed, that the scientists of the Mushroom Kingdom are all amoral monsters. There then came a brief bit confirming the existence of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 from Monolith Soft, of which they showed a decent amount, even if most of it was just gibberish anime dialogue, after which there came an even briefer segment confirming Fire Emblem Warriors from Koei Tecmo, of which they showed practically fuck all beyond some coloured balls and an emblem in space. This was all to introduce a segment about third-party support for the Switch that, considering Nintendo's previous track record, could well be over by the time you finish watching this video. A new Switch version of Dragon Quest X, originally released in 2012, was promised, as well as a sequel, titled, unsurprisingly, Dragon Quest XI. Versions of Dragon Quest Heroes 1 and 2 were also promised, for people who are into that sort of thing. And that was only 4 of these supposed 80 games Koizumi-san claims are in development for the Switch by third-party developers. And to my surprise, he had even more to show off. None of which are anywhere close to being ready for launch, but let's trot through them anyway, shall we? Firstly, a Shin Megami Tensei game, not Persona 5, although it is sort of part of the same series, kind of, except it really isn't, even though both series have the same creatures in them, except in one they're called demons and the other they're called personas, and sod it, it will take me far too long to explain. Development has only just begun, so all they had to show was this cinematic trailer of demons in an abandoned school. Nevertheless, it's still a damn sight more than what Koei Tecmo had to show for Fire Emblem Warriors. After that was an RPG with the working title of Project Octopath Traveler, published by Square Enix and developed by Silicon Studio, whom you may be familiar with if you've played 3D Dot Game Heroes or Bravely Default. Little else is known about it at this time, but name aside, it looks pretty spiffy with its side-on quasi-3D perspective in the style of classic 16-bit JRPGs. Up next was a younger, beardless version of Xehanort from Kingdom Hearts HD 2.77 recurring Days of Sleep Unchained Dream Drop the Bomb. Revengeance. Or whatever fucking installment of that narratively incoherent series he first appears in. I stopped giving a fuck after Kingdom Hearts 1. Actually, it was Toshihiro Nagoshi, corporate director of Sega, who did bugger all else during his time on stage besides talk up the Nintendo Switch. He didn't even show us Sega's new 2D Sonic game, Sonic Mania, which bucks the trend of recent Sonic games by actually looking halfway decent. Anyhow, after that little monologue from a man resembling an anime villain came a special appearance from Todd Howard of Bethesda, confirming a version of Skyrim for the Switch. A necessary confirmation at that, as there was a wee bit of confusion about whether or not Skyrim would actually be coming to the Switch. Yes, I know, Nintendo demonstrated Skyrim running on the Switch in that little teaser they put out months ago, but footage of a game running on a new system doesn't necessarily mean that game is actually coming out on said system. That is, according to a spokesman from Bethesda around that time, who said the following: "We're happy to have had the opportunity to collaborate with Nintendo on the video. While we are not confirming any specific titles at this time, we are pleased to announce our partnership with Nintendo and support of the Switch. We look forward to revealing specific games and details in the future." Fortunately, we now have Todd Howard confirming it, or as much as Todd Howard can confirm anything given his propensity for exaggeration.
Our new rating AI system, it allows NPCs to have full 24/7 schedules. These NPCs are not scripted. These NPCs are not scripted. These NPCs are not scripted.
These NPCs are not scripted.
While it's nice to have Skyrim confirmed, however, it's not exactly what you call a killer app now, is it? I mean, it is rather hard to get excited for a game that came out over 5 years ago and damn near everybody already owns. Now, if Todd announced The Elder Scrolls 6 debuting on the Switch, that would have been something. Still, at least we got some information out of Todd's segment. Unlike the next bit featuring Suda51 of Killer 7, No More Heroes and the more recent Let It Die fame, whose dramatic entrance here was so astounding it rendered his translator practically speechless.
Hi everyone, I'm Suda51 from Grasshopper.
Oh Christ on a Sibian, you had one job. One fucking job. I probably could have done a better job and I can barely say hello in Japanese. It's konnichiwa. Thanks to the aforementioned half-assed translation, the only information I got out of this bit was Travis' touchdown from No More Heroes is coming back, in some form, to the Switch, in a game whose name hasn't been decided yet. That and Suda's been speaking to a bunch of Japanese indie developers. Moving on. Oh great, fucking great, we can't even escape EA Sports guff at a bloody Nintendo presentation. On the bright side, at least Bill Trinan here knows how to do a proper translating job. Not that I could tell if he was doing a shoddy job or not since, as we've already established, I don't speak Japanese. But then Bill only started his career at Nintendo translating bug reports for Ocarina of Time. How hard can that be? You just say, Kono gemu wa knackered, right? Although, to be fair, he is also Shigeru Miyamoto's personal interpreter. Anywho, Patrick Soderlund of EA, he was there to announce a FIFA title for the Switch, something I'm sure you all find about as thrilling as I do. If you somehow find that news more thrilling than I do, for reasons like you're a fan of FIFA games and the footballs, bear in mind this version is rumoured to be based on the 360 and PS3 ones. Yes, they still make those, and frankly, even you have to concede that a port of a 360 or PS3 game isn't going to set anyone's world on fire. Somewhat more interesting, though not too much more, was the ensuing sizzle reel of other stuff from Nintendo and third parties allegedly being developed for the Switch, such as Telltale's Minecraft Story Mode, proper Minecraft of the block digging kind from Mojang, a Rayman game, Lego City Undercover, to Dragon Balls, and Skyrim. Woo, someone put me in an MI6 safe house, it's killer app central round here. Of course, Nintendo aren't completely clueless, not yet at least. They ended their presentation with the trailer for the game that most has people somewhat vaguely sort of interested in buying a Switch, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Before that, however, you had to sit through this little speech from Nintendo of Europe president Satoru Shibata, then this little segment from Nintendo of America's Reggie Fils-Aimé. Unlike Shibata, however, who merely thanked people for tuning in at 4 AM UK time, Reggie established a sense of tone, mood and place, as though he were a venerable storyteller weaving tales in the dwindling light of a wilderness campfire.
It's the midnight hour here in New York. The streets are quiet, but there's definitely something in the air.
You know, Reggie, I think you missed your true calling in life. Film noir voiceovers.
It's the midnight hour here in New York. The streets are quiet, but there's definitely something in the air.
Reggie then brings up Zelda Breath of the Wild's release date, except Reggie apparently doesn't know what it is, nor do Shigsy or Aonuma here. So they pass it back to Mr. Kimashima in Tokyo here, only he doesn't actually mention it. All he does is reaffirm the Switch's release date. Fortunately, it's the same date Breath of the Wild is coming out, what with it being a launch title and all. Only to get that information you had to sit all the way through this otherwise quite nice trailer that, nevertheless, makes the game look all washed out, like the screen gamma has been set too high. I know it's not really as washed out looking as this because I've seen photos and screenshots that make it look like sodding Wind Waker. Anyway, with that, the whole thing came to a merciful end. So I guess it's time for my final thoughts on the Ninty Switch. Well, it's not terrible. The Switch's hybrid design certainly differentiates it from the Xbox One and PS4, as does Nintendo's decision to make couch co-op a key selling point. Ditching the Wii name also, in theory, means there should be no confusion amongst the normies this time round, because believe it or not, there really were ordinary members of Joe and Jane Q Public who thought the Wii U was just a touchscreen controller add-on for the Wii. Bridging the gap between home consoles and handhelds could work very well if marketed successfully, but Nintendo is kinda trying to straddle two separate chairs here, in trying to be two things at once. By providing a powerful enough home console experience and a satisfying handheld one, it runs perilously close to becoming the master of neither. Another sticking point is the number of launch title exclusives, specifically the lack of them. Of the 8 Switch titles that'll be out and ready to play on March 3rd, only 3 are exclusive to the platform: The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, 1-2 Switch, and Super Bomberman R. Just Dance 2017 came out on other platforms back in October 2016, as did Skylanders Imaginators, and the Binding of Isaac Afterbirth Plus is simply the Binding of Isaac Rebirth with the newest DLC. Meanwhile, the Switch version of I Am Setsuna will only be out in Japan on launch day, with North American, European and other regional versions coming later in the month. On the bright side, there's always Constructor HD, a remake of a PC MS-DOS game from 1997, which wasn't all that bad as I remember, but not tremendously groundbreaking either. Get it? Construction? Breaking ground? Then we get to the cost of peripherals and the cost in general. That $299 may not seem too bad to some of you, but remember I said earlier that the Switch has no bundled games with it? If you want something to play on it on launch day, then that's an extra $50 or your regional equivalent. Or if you're in the UK, a first aid kit scavenged from a crashed ambulance. By the way, the standard JoyCon clip included with the console doesn't work as a charger. It's literally just a clip to hold the Joy-Cons together. If you want one that does work as a charger, that'll be another 30 Yankee bucks. Otherwise, if you want to charge them up, you'll have to keep sliding them onto the screen while it's docked. Also, if you fancy one of those Pro controllers to play Breath of the Wild with on your big TV, that'll be another $70 please. And if you couldn't get a Switch with the red and blue Joy-Cons and want to buy them separately, you're looking at $80 for the pair. If none of that is enough to dissuade you, then well, it probably doesn't matter anyway. By the time you watch this, your chance of actually pre-ordering one is about as high as the life expectancy of a gnat in a microwave. Almost every outlet you can think of is already sold out of the things, leaving you little choice but to pay a stupid amount of cash for the one that fell off the back of a lorry in Shenzhen I mentioned earlier. Whether this is a result of genuine large-scale demand for the Switch or simply a case of Nintendo manufacturing an artificial scarcity of the things is not entirely certain, although the latter scenario is most fucking likely. Nintendo not only did the exact same damn thing with the Wii, they also did it more recently with the NES Classic Edition, with some stores receiving as few as 5 units. Yep, 5. And I'm not talking podunk game stores in Louisiana swamp shacks here either. This was at major US outlets such as Target and GameStop, in big cities like Cincinnati and Philadelphia. That's the kind of shortage you only get if a company is being either deliberately underhanded or woefully incompetent. So don't assume the Nintendo Switch has recaptured the lightning in a bottle that was the Wii just because you can't pre-order one. Not unless you're a rabid Nintendo fanboy who thinks Shigeru Miyamoto is a modern day saint. But if that's the case, there's no talking sense to you anyway. I'm not saying I want to see the Switch fail. Far from it. I like the concept of a console I can both use at home and take with me on a bus, train, or to all those exclusive rooftop parties I regularly attend. It's also nice to see a console that isn't just a budget PC in all but name, like the Xbox One and PS4 are. It just doesn't excite me as much as it could do, especially since I have no real emotional attachment to Nintendo. I went from a ZX Spectrum to a Sega Game Gear and then finally to the PC, a process that also included a brief dalliance with the Amstrad GX4000, which I don't like to talk about. I would also occasionally dabble with whatever console my brother had at the time, one of them being a GameCube that I only ever played Eternal Darkness on. I do also have a DS lying around somewhere, but I only ever use that to play New Zealand Story, Scribblenauts and The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass. Point being, Nintendo were never a huge part of my gaming life the way they were, and still are for some people, and that obviously colours my own perceptions of this presentation. I'd like to be excited for the Switch, I really would, but it's going to take more than just a new Zelda and re-releases of games I can already play on my PC. The Switch still appeals to me way more than the Wii U ever did, however, if that really means much. If the right game comes out for it, there's enough third-party support, and the Switch is capable of providing me with experiences significantly different from those I get on my PC, then I may eventually pick one up. For now, however, I'll neither be pre-ordering one nor buying one on launch day. And nor will many other people, thanks to that good old Nintendo trick of manufactured scarcity. That's all for this episode of Pixel Burn, and you've watched a man get progressively more ill in real time. If you still liked it, however, then please do let me know by clicking the requisite button down below. The small, warm glow it gives me inside my heart might make me feel a bit better sooner. And also let your friends, family, your dog, and Shigeru Miyamoto know as well. At the very least, I hope you found it tolerable. Meanwhile, till next time, whenever that is, you can go now. I can't keep doing this, you know.